Amazon. I've been there for about 10 years. As you can tell from the accent, I do come from the US office, but I've spent the last 3.5 years here, so just before COVID. So I was invited over here to sit alone in an apartment and work. Right now, I lead our military recruiting team, which is part of Hiring Ahead. Something totally new for me, but really enjoying it. And prior to that, I ran grad and MBA programs in both the US and EMEA.
Thank you. Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I work for Taylor Wessing, which is a global law firm. We have offices based across the globe, but I'm actually based from the Liverpool office, which is an office that we developed back in 2018 and now is about 130 people strong. So we've got about 1,500 people across the globe, and I'm the talent acquisition manager there. So my responsibility is really everything around kind of projects, driving candidate experience forward, but I also manage a team who look after our business services recruitment, which is more of our support functions, I suppose, outside of the lawyer recruitment, if that makes sense. So nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Sarah.
Hi everyone, my name's Ben Gledhill. I'm TA Director for Manchester Airports Group. My job entails doing our best to keep ourselves out of the media and social media newspapers. Prior to that, been Yodel, Thames Water, and a few years in RPO.
Excellent. Thank you very much for introducing. I probably should have mentioned the panel discussion is all around how to build, develop and grow your TA team. So really about the teams that you look after, you're starting to look after or you're about to look after as well. So do feel free to get the questions flooding in. You've all been very chatty today, so it'd be great to have that come through on the panel discussion as well. But I think perhaps the first question we can get stuck into, obviously, talent attraction in general has been a tough market, but talent attraction for TA has been even tougher. How are you currently finding it? And have you had to sort of change? What are you doing to attract people into TA currently? Sarah, I can see you nodding vigorously.
Yeah, so our team's grown kind of probably double the size actually since I joined a year ago. And that's been through, I suppose, a number of different measures. So first of all, recognising internal talent and promoting talent from within, which is super important, I suppose, in terms of that development piece. But also I think we can forget ourselves, I think, when we're talking about pipelining talent. So keeping that continual kind of drip feed through in terms of talent pooling from a TA perspective is something also that we've done to kind of continue that networking, making sure even if we haven't got an open role, that we're continuing, I suppose, to keep our finger on the pulse from a market perspective, because we do that to support our business areas, but I think sometimes we forget to do that ourselves. So that's something else that we've done, which has obviously proved. But I think also challenging ourselves to think outside of the traditional place. So I think particularly in the legal sector, finding people who have got experience, I suppose, recruiting in that sector. I didn't come from a legal sector background. I actually worked at FMCG and before that financial services. So we've got a real blend of industry experience in the team as well, which I think we've challenged ourselves on. So that's also something that I think has been super important and successful for us so far.
Free car parking, lounge access, fast track passes. No, I think, I've done quite a lot of hiring since I've kind of joined, and for me, it's all about the journey and the story. Yes, we have tech, yes, we have employer branding, all that kind of jazz, but, the whole reason I was brought into the airport was to kind of get us back to where we need to be and some. So when I'm kind of speaking to recruiters and TA partners and, whatever we're calling ourselves these days, do you want to be part of something? That's the reason why I joined. Mm-hmm. So I think a little bit of kind of transparency and saying, you know what, the grass isn't greener.
Yeah.
You can probably get an easy job somewhere else, but if you want to be part of something,
Yeah, definitely.
So yes, on everything Ben and Sarah said, one of the interesting and fun things that we've done lately is implemented a grad program within TA. So we've brought in fresh grads who have absolutely less than zero experience. and built a training program for them to learn how to become sourcers, for them to learn how to become client lead recruiters, and everything in between. And working with that group as both as a peer, that I partner with some of them and I also manage some of them, is just the biggest thrill ever, because they are so excited to join a workforce. They're so excited to learn, and that just becomes very infectious. So I think that that's one of the most innovative things that we've done in the last couple of years, and watching it grow is cool as well.
That's really interesting. So how long has that been running? Have you had a full sort of grad scheme go through the process yet, or?
When you say go through the process, like I don't think we've yet seen people get promoted out of it,
Yeah.
but we've seen them go into like second rotations, third rotations,
Okay.
and use their learning to sort of propel themselves through the organization.
Yeah.
And it's working. And the training that you have to put in with grads is a lot heavier than, I shouldn't say heavier, it's a lot different than what you're putting in with a tenured recruiter or even someone with 2 or 3 years of experience, just because you have to teach them everything from the very beginning, but you're also not untraining bad habits or things that don't work within your org.
So picking up perhaps some of those ex-agency days where people might have done things slightly differently or a little bit rogue, that actually you don't have to untrain them out of that. It's doing things correctly. Interesting. It's a really interesting way of thinking of it. So you've had one question. You're not very chatty on Slido. Is there too much cake? Everyone's a little bit on a sugar high or on the low at the moment. So we talk about employee experience. Should recruiter experience be a big focus to attract recruiters to our teams, given how important we are to the business? Does anyone want to take that one?
I still have a mic, so I will go. I think recruiter experience is just as important as any other employee experience. We're also valuable members of the company. I think that because we are so externally facing, and we are the ones speaking to people trying to get them into the company, it is really important to promote healthy work-life harmony. It's important to promote ownership. It's important to let them shape some of their roles so that they can talk about the ownership, not just in the concept that we have of it, but actually in their day-to-day lives. And I think that, talking about what they can accomplish when we're bringing them in is something that gets them in, but also contributes to retention.
Yeah.
I would totally agree. I think that it's really important that, I suppose, we're not just paying lip service to what we do. So actually, you really feel the experience, I suppose. And we've got to make sure that, I suppose, as a talent acquisition team, everything that we're trying to sell is actually something we really feel. So I think from my perspective, making sure that we can be super transparent with that, making sure that people are bought in, I suppose, to what Ben said, are bought in, I suppose, to the organisation, and really kind of, can sell that experience from an employee perspective, including internal and also external is really important. So I concur with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other kind of angle that I'll kind of come in at, I think this is where you need really good leadership. Yes, you can have the best ATS. Yes, you can have a big budget, but if leaders aren't doing their job, influencing, a lot of people talk about TA, need a seat at the top table. No, they don't. They just need to be better influencers. So I think you need your leadership to really kind of... God, that camera's really close. I do need a new LinkedIn picture so you can crack on. So, yeah, it's up to leaders to really kind of get across, how strategically important hiring is to CEOs, COOs, and ultimately chief people officers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real challenge. I think when we had this panel discussion at our London event, and the talk actually, or the panel discussion, morphed quite a bit into what leadership actually meant and what true leadership meant, especially within your sort of TA teams. And Neil obviously mentioned around the sort of fatigue. I don't know where you are now. There you go. Making sure that your team are okay and you're okay from a leader perspective as well, which is really key. So I had a few questions come through. So how's your business dealing with the requirement to see right-to-work documents in person for remote workers, generally speaking? Is that Ben, might go to you on this one, just from the
Yeah,
volume.
We're quite black and white. I mean, majority of people work at the airport need security clearance, so we need to see the originals.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds a little bit, could be a little bit discriminatory, but we're an airport, we're a national security infrastructure, so it's one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, we have the blend, I suppose, in terms of that, but we also do a lot of them physically as well.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Are you seeing recruiting tech stack or tools being a factor in recruiters deciding if they want to join your teams? That's a really interesting one. So actually, like tech people would do, does that influence whether they join you or not? Perhaps yourself, Susan, just from yours.
Yeah.
Oh, go on.
First off, disclaimer, I don't manage a tech team. I am probably the least technical person at Amazon. But what I will say is that I've never had a recruiter within my team ask before joining what tools we have, but I do get that as a recurring theme about their frustrations and what some of the hardest parts of their jobs are. Is this being recorded?
We can edit. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe we can edit this out, but my team will say that there are lots of repetitive steps in their process, and sometimes when I go into our recruiting systems, it sort of amazes me that I can order a package online and get it before I can upload something to the system and have it sync through. And that is an absolute frustration. So I don't know that that tools is a factor in getting them in, but it is a factor in terms of like job satisfaction. And we do have to show them that we are continuing to explore and evolve those so that they understand that their feedback is heard and appreciated on that.
Yeah.
And they're building us tools, but we're kind of building the plane while we're flying it. And that's, you have to want to be part of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose in terms of we're going through that process at the moment, we've got quite a traditional kind of ATS that we use. And I think when I was sat on the round table before, we were talking about perhaps there doesn't seem to be a perfect solution in terms of technology, but I would concur. I think through all of the hiring that we've done of late, we haven't had the question asked actually through the process particularly, but we totally get the frustrations, but making sure that the team understand that their voice is heard. We'll look and explore at what we can do, I suppose, and what is within the realms of the possible with the technology that we utilise. And I think that, we have the opportunity to be able to look at what else is out there. We're not necessarily going to get that always signed off from a budget perspective, but I think we certainly from a voice perspective make sure that those frustrations are heard and actually what it can mean for the business if we do explore different options. So, yeah, I would concur.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't experienced it personally, although I have heard of it, and I think all I'll say is a good recruiter never blames their tools.
Yeah. Or just anyone, a good toolman? No, what's that? A good builder never blames their tools, do they? Yeah.
I think, anybody who kind of follows me on LinkedIn or see me talk, probably know I'm a big fan of technology, and technology has a place, but CapEx budgets are getting tighter. We can't just go out and spend 100k on this, that, the other. So, again, I think people probably need to be a little bit more open-minded to, the realities of the current hiring world.
Can I just ask who asked that question, if you're comfortable? So do you come from a tech side?
PayPal.
Okay, and so is that something that you're hearing from tech recruiters who are sourcing like those in-demand SDEs?
I've started to a lot more, yeah. It's become a trend over the last 6-12 months, massively.
Yeah, it's like we can no longer just give them access to LinkedIn Recruiter and...
They want way more.
Can I just ask out of interest, what systems are people turning their noses up? Because I can probably guess, but what
Can I give Sam a... let me give him this one. Sorry, you can get up on the stage if you want as well, Sam.
I'll stay seated for now, thank you. I think we do have certain, and I won't name any names just in case there's anybody in the room that would be upset by it, but we do have some recruiters coming through as candidates that have preferred systems and actually will say no to roles based on, have you got X tool, Y tool, for instance. What they seem really keen on as well is actually how the integration has been, because you can bring on a piece or an ATS or a CRM, whatever you like, but if it's been integrated really poorly and half the functionality has been turned off, then obviously it becomes a very difficult tool. Even in another organisation, it might be fantastic. So we're seeing that nuance coming through even as well, where they actually want to know what the integration has been like, what functionality is live, all of this sort of thing. So it's something we've seen in software engineers wanting to know the tools that they'll use in detail, but recruiters have got to that stage as well on the tech side.
Excellent. Thank you, Sam. I was intrigued as well, so I'm glad you asked, Susan. There you go. Okay, we're going to move on to a very big topic, actually. Marcel has posed this. So TA can be one of the biggest influences for D&I. How do you as leaders ensure your teams understand it and, more importantly, challenge potentially discriminatory behaviours in the hiring process? Go on, Ben.
Yeah, so I'm quite lucky. I have a group CEO and a new chief people officer, and this is the top of their agenda. I still think it's quite sad that we're still talking about D&I and it's 2022, but anyway. I think for me, yes, again, you can buy technology, you can have a fantastic careers website with role models, but it's all about culture and behaviour. You have to take hiring managers on a journey, and we've just started a hiring manager kind of training, kind of license to hire module, whereby we're getting in external speakers to kind of talk through real life examples of the negativity around D&I with real life examples. So that covers things like bias, racism, obviously sexism, kind of covering the, kind of covering the spectrum. But yeah, for me, it is all around kind of coaching, education, and I think sometimes that we mistake ignorance. A lot of individuals might not have ever experienced D&I before, so I think it's important to kind of understand and appreciate people's own journeys, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think from our side, it's really around that education piece. I think that we have, again, similar to what it sounds like for you, Ben, we have a D&I kind of lead on the board level, so it's at the top of the agenda, I suppose, and it filters down. We have a lot of networks, we have a lot of, I suppose, other initiatives that we look at, I suppose, which are broadly outside of talent. We did, as one of the first law firms in the UK, sign up to the Mansfield Rule, and I don't know whether anyone will know what that is, but effectively it's about making sure that we have got, and we're, I suppose, challenging ourselves on those historically underrepresented groups within the legal industry, and in particular for us, that's something that we've kind of set our head above the parapet for, and I suppose we are making sure that we are tracking, but that's not just about numbers, that's, again, thinking about the training, the education. We've put the talent team through inclusive hiring kind of training, just making sure that everybody can understand and, I suppose, understand what those behaviours should be, so that we can then help to educate the hiring managers as well. So that's another piece that we've been really proactive in over the last 12 months or so. And we will continue to work on, I suppose, as part of that journey.
Just to toss in one more note, TA is really only a co-owner of diversity goals and DEI initiatives, right? Like, the business has to help out there. And I think that's something that I'm actually super fortunate in, is my business knows that, because they're getting the same DEI goals as we are. And especially working in an operational business, if you give a bunch of operators a goal, they are going to hit it. But it comes from education, discussion, open and honest conversation, and then making sure we are finding ways to communicate with those diverse communities that we want to partner with.
Yeah, that's really key. And I think that's probably, Marcel, why you said the biggest influence rather than owner or responsibility on TA as well. So that's a really good point. Moving on to the next question, I'll come to Magwan in a second. But what do you see as the TA challenges that you are focusing on over the next 12 months? Are there any sort of big projects, big areas that you're working on at the moment that you think are going to be key? Obviously, Liz Truss resigning might change things. We've already had a couple of U-turn conversations today, haven't we? So
I'm just preparing the headspace for the mag one. So.
Yeah.
Like, what I'll say is that learning how to keep a team steady with fluctuating demand, right? Like, when our demand spikes, I don't want to have to grow and develop an entirely new team, and I don't want to make changes as demand changes, like, to my team, right? So figuring out where else we can add value when we have fewer recs, and where we can scale when we have more recs. That's something that I've been super focused on, and has actually become a really, really fun challenge. But it's something that you want to think about before you end up in that position, right? So constantly saying, okay, what will my team be working on, or what will I be working on if all of a sudden I go from having 20 open recs to having 3, or vice versa. Like, how can I manage 100 open recs instead of 20? Like, what does that look like for me? And making sure that you're setting yourself up to be proactive versus reactive to demand changes.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think that's going to be really key, especially it has been over the last sort of 6 to 12 months, and then sort of moving forward as well, as perhaps it goes down the slope rather than up.
Yeah, and I think from our side as well, I suppose getting the business to think proactively around, we can start to talent pool this talent. Let's not just be reactive all the time. Let's start getting ahead of the game and starting that kind of future that you think, workforce planning is there as a standard, but actually it takes a real effort to create that shift, I think, out in the business. So we're trying to take them on that journey at the moment so that we can continue to be proactive in that space, and it is going to be a journey. I think the other piece, though, is because we are a relatively new team, is around making sure that we are recognising, I suppose, how we all work together. So not forgetting to have fun when we work. It can be a really gruelling time, I think, at times, particularly when you've got a high volume of recs, and it does fluctuate. But I think someone was talking earlier around that mental health kind of piece. We have something we call the Mindful Business Charter, which we've signed up to, but it's providing that safe space for people to talk about, things that maybe they may be challenged with, and providing that environment where people enjoy coming to work, because it is a tough gig. But I think it's important that people actually feel that they can air anything that perhaps they're not comfortable with, or we can help with, and making sure that people have the right level of support. So I think particularly with us being a new team, that's something that's really important, and particularly, I suppose, with the volumes that we're facing as well.
Shall I ask you the mad question?
Who asked it out of interest?
At the back.
Context as to why. So I work for JDA, and obviously in the Northwest it's got sometimes quite a bad stigma, like people wanting to work there. So I'd be interested to see, with you guys having, a really rough time in the region in the summer, what you're doing to make it a more attractive place to work. So I hope that gives some context.
Yeah, thank you.
Not just calling you out.
No, absolutely. Do you know what? I could happily give some kind of corporate spiel that we usually have.
We might not be able to actually replay this video at the end.
No. Anybody that knows me, I kind of talk from the heart. So I'll be really honest. When I started, we were in a mess. Not going to lie. Security was 2 hours on a good run.
Yeah.
You might get your bags with them in a week, probably 2. If you go on Glassdoor, it was just horrendous, getting battered from pillar to post. And yeah, Twitter, the Evening News, the Sun, the Star, you name it, we're getting battered. So we've I think the biggest thing, this might sound like a little bit of a get out, but we're accepting where we are. I think sometimes organisations just don't read the room, and that's what we've done. So in terms of some of the operational things that we're doing, we know there is a pay issue. For example, our security officers that fundamentally protect life, they get paid the same as checkout assistants at Lidl.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We know that's a problem. We're looking at things like our rota systems as well, to make sure that people have a community that they can be part of. That's across Manchester, East Midlands and Stansted. Moving further afield, we're getting better relationships with our partners, so the airlines and the what we call the ground crew, so Swissport, DHL. And in terms of our corporate functions, that is really, really tough. We're competing against Sam, you're not on Twitter, are you? Tweeting what I'm saying. Just checking. We're competing against the Cinchers, the AOs, the Booking.coms for the usual type of candidates. But yeah, people are like, but you're on BBC, ITV News, and we saw the security tray. So yeah, it's been really, really tough. So I think we're going back to basics. We're creating a new EVP across the airports, and we're just taking each week as it comes. But I think we're slowly winning people back, and that's just through good, solid, basic hard work. Solid attraction, good assessment. We've introduced a new online testing for our spatial awareness.
Yeah.
Maybe get me back next year to see how we're getting on.
Yeah. See what you've done. Yeah.
Just a quick
Thank
plug.
you for asking, though, by the way. Thank you.
A quick plug for the airport. I just want you to know that I flew through both Heathrow and Manchester this morning. Manchester, way more efficient than Heathrow. They got us
And
all.
we're nicer as
Well done, Ben. There you go. But I think the key there is being quite open and honest about where you're actually at as well, is just understanding and maybe not pulling the wool over people's eyes or just sort of burying your head in the sand on that one. So thank you for answering that one. Really interesting question, actually, and I think this is quite a key area that people quite often forget about, is actually developing their own TA talent. You know, where do you go within sort of TA? Do you go into HR people? What are the kind of opportunities? So how should businesses be approaching the balance between recruitment and talent development? Are there different skill sets? They are different skill sets, but should business development people that can do both? If so, how? Essentially, how to develop TA folk.
I would say
So is that asking how you develop recruiters?
That's how I'm posing it, yes.
I'm seeing it as two different things. I'm
Okay.
seeing it as that, and I'm also seeing it as is TA responsible for running the development programs for folks that they're bringing in for their businesses? Whoever asked that, do you want to clarify it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was me. I guess what I was getting at was in recruitment's a specific function, you know, job sourcing, candidate job spec creation, knowing where to look. But actually, if we expanded that one step further and gave recruiters the ability to spot talent coming into the business and understand those progression routes, then would it give talent acquisition staff an edge, and businesses an edge in attracting people? So I guess what I'm saying is there's two different skill sets: developing and understanding where talent can go, and actually just sourcing those. And how should businesses be balancing that, really?
I think it's a super interesting question, and I have sort of two immediate thoughts. The first is folks in TA, like, they want to be in talent acquisition. I don't know if you add in a layer of talent development they're going to say, like, yes, I love that. So I would be cautious about that side of it. If it is something that they're super into and are excited about, how do we scale a team with that volume of responsibility? Because then you start needing, you know, one recruiter per job function, per region. And is that the most scalable way to run a TA team? And, you know, maybe that's my Amazon operational side coming in, and someone else is better to answer that question. But I think it would be cool if there could be some component of that, because you're right, it would give an edge.
Yeah, I think I agree. I haven't seen it in where I've worked before operate that way. It could be an interesting dynamic, but I think that the role, I suppose, of talent acquisition, similar to what Susan said, is so broad now. There's so many expectations that we're putting on, I think, our recruiters in terms of that market insight, that data piece, that relationship piece. It's not just transactional. It's just difficult, I think, for me to see how that would work unless you really scale back the number of positions that a recruiter was working on so that they can connect the dots. So if anyone has seen that, you know, done successfully, I would be interested to hear about it, but I don't think I've come across that.
Yeah, I mean, you do see a little bit of it in your bigger organisations, and I'm talking about kind of, you know, PLC, you know, kind of multi-geography ones. I think, personally, my opinion, I think that is where we're going. You know, the rate that we spend on Indeed and Reed and Total Jobs, there can't be that many candidates left to attract, if I'm honest. So we're going to have to start looking internally a lot more. You know, kind of career paths and journeys. And I actually do think you probably will start seeing in the next few years L&D creeping into job descriptions in terms of, over the next 3 years, we're going to train you this way, develop you that way. So I think, yeah, probably 2 or 3 years you will see more of a talent partner, both internal and external.
Yeah, which feeds into what Dan was saying in his research earlier today about that sort of career progression. That's what's attracting people. So just changing your question slightly there, what about developing your own TA teams? The people that you are leading, people that you're looking after, where do they go when they want your job, essentially? Like, because they can't, well, they might be able to have your job, but where are you then going to go? So where do you lead people into? What's your sort of development plans for your team?
I think for me it's about, I suppose, making sure that you have that real understanding of where that individual wants to go to, and making sure that those goals that are set encompass that. So yes, we've got all of the metrics that you would expect a recruiter to fulfill, but actually providing those opportunities of stretching projects, which might be cross-functional projects in different part of talent, or might be in a different part of the business, or that to me, I suppose, is really helping individuals perhaps do something that will then support them on that development journey. So I've seen people in the past move across different parts of HR, move out of HR, move actually into the business. So I think it's about, helping, I suppose, to broaden those horizons, that it isn't just a linear route up, and actually there's lots of things that you can do, I suppose, laterally. But, I suppose in terms of the market insight, so encouraging individuals to go to events, we have guest speakers that come in on a monthly basis as part of our talent acquisition calls that are external speakers to help people broaden their perspectives across the team. So I think the small things that you can do across a broader level, but on an individual level, I think it's about very much for me. I provide my team with the opportunity to have those cross-functional opportunities based on what interests them and where they want that development journey to go, which could be a horizontal move, right, rather than going upwards.
Absolutely.
Mic drop.
I think, everything that Sarah said, I think I'm always a big one of kind of, when I say developing leaders of the future, I mean giving them the real kind of tools to do their job. So things like, how to write a CapEx business case, how to get CEO or chief, kind of whatever approval. Don't get me wrong, things like employee branding and technology is really, really important, but that's changing all the time anyway. But the real good old-fashioned leadership traits around influencing, empathy, stakeholder management, profit and loss, I think they're the real things that we should be coaching and teaching, in my opinion.
Excellent. Susan?
Yeah, all of that, and I like to make sure that they're not so overloaded that they don't have the opportunity to explore everything else that's out there. Amazon is obviously a huge company. I think that my first manager role, the first time someone wanted to leave my team, I was heartbroken. I was like, I've failed. She doesn't want to work with me anymore. She doesn't want to do this. But now, many years later, I think it's a compliment to me that I've grown someone that feels comfortable going to try something totally new and different. I like to make sure that I'm giving them that confidence, because that is the beauty of the organization that we're in. And the fact that they're taking advantage of that is really cool.
Excellent. We have only got a few minutes left, I'm afraid. So I'm actually going to end up on a question more around what tips you would give fellow leaders in this room insight on. So is there anything specific, or is there a certain characteristic that you think would work well in helping lead and develop your own sort of TA teams? I know I've probably chucked this one on you fairly last minute. So
Is it do you mean TA leaders or people in TA generally?
TA leaders, so the leaders in this room, whether it's managing a small team, big team, starting out.
Number one, forget about candidate experience, because I'm bored of talking about it. I think that the main one for me is what I've just said. I've got probably 2 or 3 mentors. A good solid mentor, whether it be a chief people officer, a HRD, chief operating officer, start to look for good business operational behaviour rather than TA. I've I have a finance director mentor, nothing to do with hiring at the moment, but if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have learned a lot of the things that I kind of know. So maybe, I know everyone's busy, but take your head a little bit above the parapet and look at other kind of industries or skills to learn from. I think that's probably
your top tip.
Yeah, top tip.
I think mine would be just don't forget about the people element. I think we can all become really busy in a really demanding environment, and I suppose goes back to that, check in with the team, that mindful business charter piece that I talked about before, making sure we remove anything that we can do, I suppose, in terms of those unnecessary stresses in the workplace, and making sure that we are checking in and having that psychologically safe environment for people to want to work within the team. I think for me, that's probably, it can become so busy that can almost get pushed down the list, but actually I think it's a really, really important thing that we should keep at the front of our minds when managing teams and leading teams.
Yeah, exactly that. Going off what Sarah said, I think a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so if you're not familiar with it, go look at it and understand what, as a leader, you're responsible for on that, and make sure that you're working towards that and having conversations about it. And my biggest tip is have fun with it and make sure that you're in a job that you love, because if you love it and you have fun with it, you will attract and retain like-minded folks. They're easier to manage, they're easier to grow, and you have more fun as a community. Like if you read my bio, like fun is a huge part of what I do. Like my team went in to win the dress-up competition for Halloween. April Fool's Day, I believe, should be a national holiday. I've brought it to EMEA. I think it's a really an American thing. But like find those things that you can celebrate together and have fun with, because now more than ever, when so many folks are virtual, you have to build that community and give them the opportunity to bond with each other, because it will make their days better.
Can I just add one more thing, if that's okay?
Go on then, yeah.
It is something quite kind of day-to-day, but it's something that's really helped me, is a good leader probably should have some kind of mental health first aid training. We all know that the world is, although saying Liz Truss has just resigned might get better, but maybe, I think well-being now, as kind of Sarah said, is absolutely massive. And I think the ability for a leader to just simply put their arm around somebody and care for them, I think that's a huge, huge element in today's world. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, we are pretty much bang on time, so thank you so much for your insights. Sorry we didn't get through all the questions, but please do use those in the next roundtable discussions as well. So if your question was up there but it didn't get asked, feel free to use that. The next roundtable is really around for that as well. So can I give a very big round of applause to our panellists?